What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. Hope your week is off to a great start. It's yours truly, Coach Mike Dub, here with another edition of the Lockdown Defense Sports Network, continuing our daily coverage. And this week, we're talking about players that NFL teams may be sleeping on as we come up with the draft just a few weeks away. Of course, you've heard about all the blue chip guys, all the first rounders, first day picks, all that good stuff. But this week, today especially, we're going to be talking about some of the guys that you may not have heard of. Some teams may be able to pick up some of these guys on day two, maybe even day three. These are guys that are going to fill out your roster. They may be able to come in and contribute right away, but they're going to be guys that you're probably going to have to do a little bit of, deep diving on. We're here to do the hard work for you, to do that deep diving, to talk about the different positions and the different guys that stock may have went up in the offseason. Maybe they had some production and they didn't perform well at the combine or their pro days, but they're still guys to keep an eye on. Whatever the case is, these are guys that you want to keep your eye on with the later picks, the mid days, second day, third day, mid rounds, all those types of things. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to dive into our wide receivers and tight ends. That's right, our playmakers, our big time guys that make those catches, make the highlight reels. We're going to talk about some of those guys that you want to keep an eye on. So, first up, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I've mentioned before, we're going to talk about, some of the guys that you may not have already heard of in this particular position groups. And I'm talking about the tight ends and wide receivers. You've probably heard a lot of big names that are being tossed around, a lot of first rounders. We're not going to do that. So you're probably thinking about to yourself, well, what constitutes a sleeper? Is a sleeper any guy that, maybe we haven't heard of? Is it a second round guy, whatever? For me personally, when I was thinking about sleepers, I'm thinking about guys that are not going to be round one and probably won't be round two. Now, of course, it depends on, what teams feel about them, how early guys want to reach for them, so forth and so forth. But for example, our wide receivers, there are certain guys that we're just not going to talk about. We're not talking about our Luther Burtons. Obviously, we're not talking about our Travis Hunters. Those are guys that are going to be, if not first rounders, maybe early second rounders in the case of Luther Burton, but most likely first rounders. We're not talking about those guys. So really about the top five guys, consensus wise, we're not going to talk about them. And same with tight ends. We're not talking about the top, 3 to 5 guys consensus wise. So you may have heard of some of these names depending on how much draft coverage you've been watching or depending on what team you may have followed in college football. But I think a majority of people have probably not really heard a lot about these guys. So hopefully we'll spread some spotlight on them. All of these guys are ballers, and I think that they can make immediate impact. So first up, we're going to jump into our wide receivers. And the first wide receiver sleeper that really caught my eye is Savion Williams, right? Savion Williams is a Swiss Army knife for TCU, did a little bit of everything, lined up in the slot, lined up outside, lined up even at Wildcat quarterback, he even took some snaps at running back. He was just a guy that you had to get the ball to. He's a long, rangy receiver, 6'4", 222, and he's got elite acceleration. First of all, just the size. The size stands out to you already. These big body receivers, which we're starting to see a little bit more of. At the NFL, there's always trends. At times, you'll have the shiftier guys. Now we're starting to see a lot more big body, 6'4", 6'5" guys, specifically in this draft class. I'm seeing a lot more longer receivers and versatile guys. And Savion Williams is that type of guy. Like I said before, they moved him all around the offense. They were a guy that definitely they had to get him the ball in any means possible. He had a lot of snaps, like I said, at Wildcat quarterback, a lot of snaps in the backfield just as a running back, similar to if you think of like a Cordell Patterson. He's also a guy that probably will be able to kick return in the league. So I think he'll probably have an immediate impact depending on, how he looks in camp and depending on what team, gets him on their roster. But he's definitely a fit that I can see for a team that needs just an offensive playmaker, that just needs some guys that can go out and make things happen when the ball is in their hands. Now, I will say, because he's a little bit of Swiss Army knife, he does lack some of the finer tuned skill sets for a wide receiver. His hands aren't always 100%, reliable. Route running is, sketchy at times, but really he has great body control. He has a great catch radius. So if you get it in his vicinity, he's probably going to get a hand on it. These are things that all can be worked on too. So really, what it comes down to Savion Williams, he has a very high ceiling. He can go forth and be, like I said, a Cordell Patterson, an immediate playmaker for you. And I think he's a guy that'll be available probably in the third round, somewhere around there, maybe even a little bit later, depending on the team. But he's a guy that it could possibly be a low risk, high reward. So he's definitely somebody that I have an eye on as an immediate playmaker, could come in for a team. I think about a team that, anybody who needs somebody who's just, a fire starter or somebody who can get a spark to their offense. He's one of those guys, a jet sweep, like I said, a screen, put him in a wildcat, give him the ball on a toss, whatever the case is, get the ball in his hands, and something can happen. He can pull away from the defense. So maybe a Titans, what better gift can you give for your first round pick than a weapon? Somebody like him. They're a team that obviously needs some offensive weapons. Even the Browns, if they don't decide to go with Travis Hunter, they're going to need a little bit more of a spark. You saw what they did with, back in the day, if you remember them, and how they used Josh Cribbs, with their kick return game and just looking for a spark in that offense. Maybe he could be similar like that. And then also the Raiders, depending on what they do with their first overall pick, they may need some more firepower on that offense to complement Brock Bowers. So he may be a guy that may be a fit for some of those teams, but definitely a fire starter, somebody who can get going early and make some plays happen for your team. The next guy we're going to talk about, another receiver, another big body guy, is Dante Thornton. I absolutely love Dante Thornton at Tennessee with Nico, with Josh Heupel in that offense. They were exciting to watch. He was a perfect complement for Squirrel White. If you watch Tennessee play, that was their number one receiver. He's going to be, a name to watch coming out next year. But he was a major part of, the Volunteers offense and what made them tick. He's a great complimentary receiver, big body, and he really shook things up at the Shrine Bowl. He went against a lot of the top guys down at the Shrine Bowl and really did a great job with his route running, did a great job the whole week in practices. He stood out for a lot of teams. Obviously, he's an SEC guy, so he's competed against the best. So he's shown that he can play on the elite levels. What I like most about him is his versatility. He's another guy that can get lined up in different places, but also he can get guarded a few different ways. At the Shrine Bowl, because he's a bigger body guy, most corners, most DBs didn't want to get up in his chest. They wanted to give him a little bit of space to work. He was quick enough and he had pretty good route running that he was able to eat up that space and still get separation. Obviously, he's a big body guy, so if guys want to get up in his chest and try to jam him, he does a good job of using his height, using his body and kind of getting that space and being able to box him out and make those contested catches. So very versatile. I think he's a perfect complement at the Z position to, a bona fide X. So any team that already has a superstar, that has a go-to X receiver, then they may be able to be on the lookout for him. You think about a team like the Giants and how they, have Jalen Hyatt, who has a similar build. Obviously was at Tennessee before Thornton. So, maybe that's what they want Jalen Hyatt to be. So that's not a team that I would think that they would go for Dante Thornton right now. But a team like the Cowboys, a team like the Jets, obviously the Cowboys with CD, the Jets with Garrett Wilson, they're looking for another guy to complement him on that side, looking for another offensive weapon on those teams, looking for another target for those quarterbacks to get the ball to. I could see him being very productive on the teams like that. And because I feel like he's a sleeper, I think he's going to get an opportunity to go to a pretty good team to where he can, possibly compete for playoffs and help a team out immediately. So Dante Thornton, really love him, love his game. I think he's going to be able to be an immediate impact player for a team that they'll be able to get pretty late. All right, so now it's time to dive into our tight ends. Tight end is a position with this particular draft is actually a pretty deep position. Most of the time, you'll have one or two that you'll think of a first rounder. I see possibly, three first rounders in this draft at tight end position, possibly. One of the guys that I actually love that I hope to see in a Commander uniform is actually not even the consensus one or consensus two tight ends. We're not going to talk about him because he's not a sleeper, but cough, cough, Mason Taylor. I love him as my favorite tight end throughout the whole, Coastal Loveland is great as well. But I say all this to say that this is a particularly deep year for tight ends, and I think teams are going to be able to get some guys that can help them out pretty late in the draft. So let's go ahead and dive into it. My first sleeper at tight end is Oronde Gadsden. And if you are an old head like myself, you've been around for a while, you remember that name from the early 2000s. He is the son of the Dolphins wide receiver, so he has an NFL bloodline. Obviously, guys like that, most of the time, they come with pretty good IQ, which is important at the tight end position because it's important to be able to find the holes in the defense, to be able to sit in zones. And I think he definitely has that wide receiver pedigree. He is a wide receiver convert. Started out at wide receiver in college and then transitioned to tight end a little bit later on, which goes to show he's pretty decent at route running, pretty decent at contested catches. He's a tight end that's going to be best fit when he's utilized against mismatches. So he's going to want to go to a good team that's able to move him around, that's able to exploit the defense and put him in positions to where he's going to be matched up against a linebacker or matched up against, maybe a bigger safety and things like that to where he can utilize that mismatch. So I think it's possible. I think for him to be successful, he can make a great impact on a team that already has a lot of tools around him, that's already pretty successful and a good offensive coordinator. Some teams that I'll have an eye on them, maybe perhaps the Bengals. The Bengals, obviously with their offense, maybe looking for another pass catcher. They got what they need to get in this draft. They probably won't need to do too much on offense, if anything. But if he's a guy that's available and they're talking about best available on the board, maybe they'll snatch him up. Maybe he can contribute there. But then also the Commanders. I love the way the Commanders use their offensive weapons, moving them around, having them doing different things. He may be able to come in and contribute right away as another ball catcher for us as well. So look for him to be available. Like I said, maybe the third, maybe even the fourth round, possibly a little later, depending on what teams need. Is he a guy that a team may have to reach out for? It depends on how dire they need him. But I think he's a good pass catching tight end that could add for another weapon. Like I said, a wide receiver convert, maybe a sleeper for some teams that need that. And finally, last but not least, we're going to go into our last sleeper of this series at tight end, Gunnar Helm. So if you watch Texas play, you saw Texas, these last few years have had an exciting offense, great quarterback play, great wide receiver play, great running backs all across the board. Gunnar Helm was a perfect fit in that offense. Great pass catcher, great job of using his body, makes contested catches. He's most successful when in an offense that has a lot of other weapons. So because he's a sleeper, I think he's going to be able to be put in a position that's going to fit him and a team well because he won't be, a top first round pick to where he has to go to a pretty bad team. He's going to have an opportunity to be a third rounder, maybe a late second rounder, get an opportunity to go to a team that, is picking late in the draft. So they may be able to team him up with other weapons, which I think will be best fit. He was very useful in the play action game. So I look at a team like the Chargers, the team like the Jets that have an established run game or that want to have an established run game, and he'll be the perfect complement to eat off of that. Obviously, a good weapon for those quarterbacks. They already have weapons around him as well, so he won't be the focal point of the offense. I think he'll be doing a great job providing a safety net for those quarterbacks there, and will be able to take advantage of the mismatches in those offenses as well. So Gunnar Helm, that's another guy that I would say to definitely take a look at. And that's going to bring us to a close for our sleepers. So once again, 4 guys, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight end. All of them could immediately impact whatever team that they come to, and all of them have an opportunity to go to teams that are pretty good because they're sleepers. So I look to see these guys coming in. If they get drafted late, you know where you heard it first. Of course, you can follow us at all of our socials. Make sure you tune in for the rest of this week and then the upcoming weeks. We're going to definitely get you guys closer to the draft and get ready to see what our teams are cooking with for the next season. So without further ado, it's yours truly, Mike Dub. I'll see y'all later.